What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 310. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm here as always with...
I'm Ron.
And I'm John.
Man, that was good, guys. That was
smooth.
really metered well. Like, we really killed it that time. I just want to give you guys all a thumbs up on that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, man. So we're going to get into a pretty hefty topic here towards the back end of this show. We're going to be talking about the new the James Gunn, the Suicide Squad, the James Gunn, the
Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the show, we're going to get into like a couple different parts of that, a proper review, and then maybe some context about the reception of the movie and its release in the box office and all that stuff. That stuff that seems to be surrounding it. We're also going to be talking about the first 3 episodes of the new Hulu series called 9 Perfect Strangers, with one hell of a cast, and we can kind of get into. Try to stay away from some spoilers. That's our goal usually with these shows, especially like these Hulu shows that drop a couple episodes to kind of get you started, and then they'll start doing the weekly releases. But at the top right now, I think we're going to just talk a little bit about maybe if there's some news items you guys want to mention. But I know, Ronald, you got a chance to check out the first episode of the new Marvel series on Disney Plus called What If, right?
Yes.
So tell us about it. Tell us what you thought briefly about the first episode, and we'll probably get into it more next week when we've seen we've all seen that one, and maybe episode 2 as well.
Yeah,
sure. So What If is an animated series, the first of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, exclusive to Disney Plus, where there's this entity in the sky portrayed by
Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright. Thank you so much. Jeffrey Wright.
The great Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright. And he basically is this entity that imagines these scenarios that are very different from the scenarios that we currently know in the MCU. Think of it like Black Mirror, but for the MCU. One thing changes, and then that changes the whole reality of a story arc that you may know.
Like a butterfly effect, almost, of like go back to some crucial thing.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it will be a crucial thing. Like the What If comic series was always kind of a cool one, but sometimes it would be like, what if Aunt May became Spider Person, or what if but other times I feel like you can do odd ones where it's just like, what if this character did this thing that another character did? It's not always like a grand ironic reversal. It can just be like, something that seems like a small change, but that, as you're saying, Ronald, it can kind of have a ripple effect.
Yeah. And in this case, based on the trailers, I was going to say per the spoilers, the trailer, this particular episode was, what if Peggy Carter were to take the mantle of a Captain America-like person, but she's British, so that is the character.
Captain Britain, right?
Well, they call her Captain
Carter.
Captain Carter in it, which is interesting. So
there's a comics character named Captain Britain that has his own story, so maybe they're avoiding getting too much into that.
I think that's what it is. I think they're avoiding some of that, because I've heard of that character. So I thought that this was a pretty decent start, and I think what they're trying to do right now is get you very familiar with the idea. You're fresh off the heels of Captain America and the Winter Soldier show. So your headspace is in a place where you're like, okay, if this world were to change just like it changed very recently, how would it be? Right. I think the animation is gorgeous. Although there's something is missing about this episode, and I can't figure out if it's pacing or something like that. And the first thing I thought when I watched it was, man, DC does cartoons better. It was the first thing that I thought. I mean, and not like haphazardly. They have, like, I can name you 15 movies straight. I can give you a playlist that you can watch of solid DC things, including the Batman Halloween series that just came out, parts 1 and 2.
Yeah, the Long Halloween.
Flawless.
Have you read that comic? Did you know the series?
No. It's
a great Batman story. It's also like a nice fat graphic novel. Like if you like reading the long, a long story. I love that too. I just love sinking into a comic story.
Gotcha.
It's got really cool art too. A guy named Tim Sale. Oddly enough, the guy who wrote that story, Jeff Loeb, is the guy who sort of spearheaded the Marvel offerings on Netflix, the Daredevil, all that stuff. So he's written a lot of like seminal stories. Anyway, not to get too comics. But there's a lot. The HBO Max subscription is basically a doorway to all these awesome DC Warner Brothers animated things. And yeah, you're right. DC has always, like, the animated version of the DC universe has always been really healthy, like for decades now. So that's one way that the MCU would really have to fight to catch up. But I do think production value and gorgeous animation would be the way that Marvel could get their foot in the door, because they've got a lot more, they're starting out with all this, all this momentum. So
it is worth checking out. Like I said, I think they're starting off with something you're very familiar with, and then I think it's going to get a little nuts from here. Like, you could kind of tell. So if this is the platform that the rest of the stories will have, it feels, this is not the strongest start, but I can see some promise in the premise. Like, I've read some what ifs, but like, I haven't ever dove into it the way that this will. I think it's really cool to see what's going to play out. But this one,
it seems like it's a good starting point, if only because, like, the idea of, it being the first Avenger, like, if the first Avenger was a different character, like, I like that, like, and again, perspective, not the comics guy, but the MCU fan.
Yeah,
totally. It's like, they sell me on the idea of, like, my favorite Avenger, my favorite character in the movies. What if he wasn't the first one? Like, and that is interesting to me. And I like, the idea of it being a different character that I'm familiar with, and what repercussions that would have, maybe, like you're saying, for the episodes to come, and when they start to kind of cross, like, that might be really interesting. So
there's also something they haven't shown in the trailer that's really cool, that that's kind of the hidden. So there's like the Peggy Carter thing that you've seen in the trailer, and then there's another surprise that kind of comes out of that, which is really cool.
Well, what's interesting to me is that in the press for this, they started, like, in the last couple of weeks, they started talking about this show a little differently. After the end of Loki, they talked more openly about this show being like a way of exploring the multiverse.
Right.
And so to me, and we were like, what if kind of is going to do that? Like, I don't know if it was on the show or off, that we talked about, like, if the show What If was a way to sort of explore these little multiversal ideas. And it's like, even if it's not going to be a direct storyline that's connected yet to the movies or the shows, it fits in terms of that plan of, like, when is this show coming out? Well, this show is coming out after we've had the idea introduced to us of all these crazy splintering multiverses. So they can show you these what if scenarios. And if one of them is really cool or catchy, I guess all I'm saying is, who knows what they have planned in terms of how these things could start to inform each other and knit together. And they've already talked about some form of continuity in the idea of doing a season 2 of What If, that certain scenarios will return. So anyway, I just think it's a promising thing. And thus far, that would be my concern, Ronald, would just be, do they really have their storytelling legs under them as far as this animated thing? Obviously, the technique behind the animation, it looks kind of cool, but it has to be, like, written and directed well. It can't just be nice to look at. And I don't know. I'm intrigued by this concept, but
me too.
But I'm also kind of not surprised to hear that they don't quite nail it in the first episode. But
it's promising, and I'm wondering about some of the voice acting, but it's some of it is like really good, and some of it's like, I don't know what you're doing. I'm like, what is the fuck? Where was this recorded at? But
probably at their house on an iPhone.
Yes.
Well, it sounded like Vin Diesel that you were doing. Is there a surprise Vin Diesel appearance?
I hope so.
I guess that was more Stallone, but
cool. So what the hell else is going on? So we What If is a thing, and
we watched 3 episodes of the new Hulu series. It feels like a Nicole Kidman baby. Isn't it like the same production arm that did the HBO thing, or am I crazy about that? This just feels like another, like, I wouldn't even be surprised if that's her singing on the theme song again.
Is this like, this is I heard something about This Is Us in this show. Like some part of this is like
We're talking about 9 Perfect Strangers, by the way. Just
9 Perfect Strangers.
And I forgot. I misunderstood when you said what we were doing. So I watched the first 9 episodes of Perfect Strangers. So I'm here to talk about Balky and some hijinks, but
missed the mark by that much.
Yeah, I know.
Just a teeny bit.
Yeah. This is the same. It's David E. Kelly produced, like Big Little Lies. He did The Undoing, her other HBO show. From the jump, it has that same, vibe.
And it's interesting. I mean, you said it, those 2 names together, it feels a little bit like a vanity project, and yet it also feels like it's got this person who definitely knows how to write television. Cooking up the characters and the scenarios. And so I mean, if I had to give a 1-sentence review, I would say that what really kept me going for the most part was the acting. There were times, I mean, I don't know, in 3 episodes, which we were able to see, and which at the time of, not today, but next Wednesday, everyone will be able to see these episodes on Hulu. Those, I suppose anyone who has a subscription or access to a subscription, but surely everyone out there, you can do that. It's on Hulu. It's, they're dropping 3 to get you into this show. It does have it takes a minute to unfold what's going on. And even at the end of episode 3, you're not really sure what exactly is going on, but, I don't know. I mean, I found it kind of interesting and frustrating in little fits and spurts, but I definitely never felt like, oh, I'm going to stop watching this, and I guess I haven't fully decided after we do this segment on it, like, am I going to make sure I can catch up and watch the remainder of the show, or am I just going to maybe, watch it here and there? I don't know how into it I am, but the acting was top notch. And some of the scenes, there's some great scenes, you do get to see some really cool moments of, people bouncing off of each other. I thought that Bobby Cannavale and Melissa McCarthy had some great chemistry together. And actually, he's pretty great across the board, I thought, in this. And Michael Shannon is doing some pretty amazing stuff too. And Melissa McCarthy's been good. I don't know. There's some really interesting stuff going on. What do you guys think? And has it got its hooks in you?
I was going to say, one of the things that stands out to me is like, the same with those other 2 shows, which I think I like a lot about these shows that we're talking about, is that they have the same director for the whole series, which, like Big Little Lies had Jean-Marc Vallée, and Susan Beer did The Undoing, and Jonathan Levine is doing this. Yeah. And I've been pretty positive on most of the movies that he's made. Most recently, like I adored, loved, obsessed with Long Shot. But I've also, like, The Night Before, 50-50. Most of his movies have been pretty good in my opinion, but I like that idea of, like, having a director that kind of sticks through for the season. So he's doing like all 8 or 9 episodes that the season is.
I think there's 8.
Yeah, so I like that, because even in amongst the first 3, you do feel the cohesiveness, I think, of the direction. But yeah, I don't know. Like, so far, I don't think it's hit me as quickly as maybe Big Little Lies did, or even The Undoing, which I don't really know that I ended up liking or loving The Undoing.
Yeah, me either.
But the standout here, I think maybe even more so than any of the other ones, and maybe just because you have, such a large cast. It is the cast, and it's the performances that really kind of stand out. And, Nicole Kidman kind of being the through line, she's very good. I mean, like, I think she's really just quite good in general. But the standout, I would agree, is so far at least, I really like what Bobby Cannavale's doing. And in those scenes with Melissa McCarthy, especially in that first episode, like right off the jump, they were just like really great together.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, that's the benefit of a show like this, is that, like, with so many great actors, and I mean, we're talking like some of our favorite actors and actresses, like, in a series, kind of this mystery drama, what's going on, kind of sort of show. It's just like a treat to see so many people that we love. Like, I love Samara Weaving.
Yes, she's been
her
great
in this. She's great, and I mean, I can't wait to see what happens with her. Michael Shannon. There's all these characters that are, you can just see, you can kind of see in the next couple episodes, kind of interacting more and really having conflict more. Like, I think that is something to look forward to. To the point we're at, I don't know that I'm totally hooked, kind of like you're saying, John. I definitely want to stick with the series and kind of see where it goes. But so far, I think the real hook is, these names and these performances are enough to keep me going, and hopefully the show has a little more to deliver in the second and third portion of the season. What about you, Ronald?
I'm in. We were in the first episode. I think because I don't know what it is about like cult feeling things. I'm drawn into it. Like there's something about. So I'm also like a Michael Shannon, a cult figure who's also a fan of Michael Shannon and Samara Weaving and so the three to me that are like standing out to me, I mean in terms of just the visitors, are Michael Shannon, Samara Weaving, and then Regina Hall. Those are the three for me, right?
Yeah.
And then the staff members, Tiffany Boone, who comes from The Chi. She was in the first season of The Chi. And Manny to
yes, he's
what
great.
he's doing right now,
It's unbelievable.
Because the duality of like what he's trying to balance in the first 3 episodes is out of this world, and with his his work partner is also balancing in it is crazy. Then you have all these, like you're saying, all these actors playing off of each other in the little moments. It almost feels like a wrestling match. You're like, when is Hulk Hogan gonna fight The Rock? Hulk Hogan fights The Rock, and then you're like, when's Ric Flair gonna fight? It feels like that every scene. Like no one in this feels like they're lacking, and even
like they're being wasted.
Yes, even a YouTube star, TikTok star. No, that was Vine. A Vine star turned actor in Melvin Gregg, who is also in oh god, the drug drama on FX.
Snowfall.
He becomes one of the main drug dealers in Snowfall. What he's doing on the screen is admirable too. So like the fact that he's even in this, like that I'm even mentioning that he's solid on the same screen as these people, means there's some artistry is going on. There's some fireworks going on.
Well, when you talk about the way the cast works together, it made me think of the sort of fun of, I guess you call them like a closed room murder mystery.
I was going to say that,
like Murder on the Orient Express, or even more so, maybe even like Knives Out or something like that, which Michael Shannon was also in. But where you kind of throw these quirky characters together, and not quirky in the sense of like quirky comedy or whatever, but quirky where it's like these characters really they have got rough edges and they've all got their own little stories, and the actors are all doing something kind of interesting. And the way they bounce off of each other, it really is kind of like there's room for this all-star cast. And you're right. I think Manny Jacinto. I think his character's name is Yao. There's just something so unusual about his energy, because he presents this really calming, really sweet energy, but you also get a sense there's, again, the layers I have not yet found out. Maybe in the episodes that we have access to, I'll find out a little bit more when I watch more. But like, I feel like there's this backstory to what they're doing there, that at this place, I don't know, I guess we shouldn't say much. I think it's presented as a very mysterious show, but there's a scenario that people are going into that's being run in a way that we're learning more and more about what the true purposes of it might be and what it might actually be going on. And he's on that side, like you said, he's part of the staff of this resort, this wellness resort that the people are going to retreat, that is run by Nicole Kidman's character. And it is, I think the mystery is interesting enough to me, but I'm having flashbacks to shows that string you along with a mystery, and then there's not really much of a there.
Right.
But so I think it is the characters in the acting that's going to carry the day, very much like Lost. At its best, it was about the characters and finding out about their stories. And this show has a very Losty kind of energy to it, honestly, right down to the fact that when they go outside and they're walking, they're in that kind of, tropical or semi-tropical kind of lush world. Anyway, no, I guess we're all intrigued. I'm not quite maybe as hooked as you and Aaron are yet, Ronald, but I bet that, like I said, I bet I'll run through those episodes that we can watch before they end up airing. Because I'm just curious to see what the heck's going on. It's based on a book. Do you guys know anything about this material? Okay,
no,
yeah. I went in completely cold.
Yeah, I know nothing about it, and I'm glad that it's on Hulu, because I feel like, honestly, if this were on anything else, when this hit the internet, the streets, people would go ape shit if it was on something else. Like, I think that sometimes marketing and where it's at can affect the way that people think about it. And I'm hoping that it feels like Hulu's kind of having this rumbling about being a solid place for original TV shows and movies, and it's promising, man. And I want to see them grow. I want to see them make it, and things like this are a step. I like seeing it. So,
well, maybe we'll catch up more later in the season and see how things are shaping up.
Cool.
On the where are they? I just realized I said tropical. Are they just in California somewhere? Is it,
I've been trying to figure that out.
Really
too.
tropical. It would just be.
It comes across like it's California somewhere.
Yeah. So it's more like lush and Pacific. That was the word I was looking for. Not tropical.
It's pretty damn cool.
Don't call us. Don't email us. Don't correct us. All you people the hundreds of people who are constantly dogging us every time we misspeak.
Oh man. So
so wait, are resorts having a moment? Because there's that White Lotus show on HBO, and there's another new movie that may or may not have a resort element, but I don't want to say. But if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. If you haven't, maybe you don't. But it's like people are having this thing right now. Maybe I'm wondering if it has to do with it being easier to shoot in a remote location where you can control the amount of people that are there, but also that there might be something about, if you're like a Hollywood person, one of the things you might think, it'd be kind of neat to do a story about these resorts, these super swanky resorts that I get to go to, but I don't know. Or it might even be, this would be a fun project, the kind of Adam Sandler model of like, let's just get some cool people and go stay at a nice place.
Yeah.
Where we can socially distance.
You're absolutely right. There's something about resorts and then behind the scenes of the resort. What's really happening behind closed doors?
What are people really doing?
Yeah, that's something I've seen a ton.
Well, there's like an inherent critique of the sort of person who wants to go experience something, but wants to experience a particular kind of sheltered, pampered version of it. And I think we would all jump at the chance to have certain sheltered, pampered experiences, but you would also hopefully not kid yourself that you were experiencing like the place or the culture of a place. What you're experiencing is, a nice,
packaged version of it.
Yes, a packaged version of it, right? A cleaned up.
That ain't so bad sometimes, man.
No, it's nice. I'm just saying I can see how people would say there's something inherently like unsympathetic about about like wealthy people who have gone to a place to have a top-notch experience, like
that's the whole story of White Lotus.
Yeah. What? Yeah, I guess we could talk about that later.
We should talk about that next week, because if you catch up, like the season finale is Sunday.
Okay, let's do that.
So we could do the whole season. Yeah, that's worth checking out.
Yeah, Summer Resort. We could do that, and we could talk about 80s films with names like Summer Resort.
What else we're gonna say? Yeah, I think you're right, Ronald. Like the Hulu of it all is kind of like a weird thing, because it does seem. And I kind of felt this way about Little Fires Everywhere. Like when that came out, it definitely had that same like feeling about like the cast being like a pretty well cast, like big names. And, that was one of the Reese Witherspoon produced ones as well, which, she has her ties to HBO, like Big Little Lies. And it's they're and that was like, I think Lynn Shelton maybe did all those episodes too, if I'm not mistaken, but it's the same model that they're doing with this show. Like it seems like HBO and Hulu are kind of adopting the same approach and like even crossing over and working with the same people in some ways. So I wonder what the deals are like, because seeing these packages go from HBO to Hulu and back, it's just like interesting to see how that's even, I don't know, possible. Or I mean, I guess it's possible because they don't have like any kind of tie like where they can only do stuff there, but it is interesting because this type of show where you have like a single director doing all the episodes, and like you have a really big cast with like in all cases of what we're talking about, like strong female leads, big name actresses anchoring the show, like that's really interesting. And those two networks seem to be really buying into that business. So I mean,
man,
it's pretty awesome. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where the rest of the season goes. I'll probably catch up maybe by the next time we record to watch a couple more of them. So moving along, I think the big conversation we're gonna have now is just talking about the Suicide Squad. So the Suicide Squad finally came out last week in day and date
from
theaters.
The wicked mind of James Gunn. That's what all the ads said. Yeah,
right. The ads that really banked on people wanting to see a James Gunn movie.
Well, that's why I'm saying that. That's what they were trying to lead with. Yeah,
I'm picking up what you're dropping.
Right,
I got you, buddy. So this is one of the Warner releases that's coming out on HBO Max and theaters everywhere, basically. And I don't know where we're going to start the conversation, if we're going to talk about its performance or the movie itself. You guys have a preference?
The movie itself first, because I feel like I don't want it to dampen, as John was saying, he doesn't want it to dampen kind of.
I don't want it to dampen it.
I don't want it to dampen the whole.
I just think it would be easy to
fair shake.
It would be easy to overwhelm the actual movie with the implications, because I think the three of us are very interested in the implications of what are they going to do with the it sounds like Dennis every time now, right? From Always Sunny. The implications. But no, it's like you can't help but think about all these plans people make and how they might shift these plans. And since we talk a lot about these plans and the films, it's interesting. But this is an actual movie, not just a marketing scheme and not just part of a franchise or whatever. So yes, as a James Gunn fan, I myself was looking forward to seeing the Suicide Squad, and it was very exciting when they announced it's coming out Thursday, not Friday. So last Thursday night, my wife and I sat down to watch it, and it was with a certain excitement in the air and a tinge of sadness that this was the way I was seeing it. But when given the option to see it in the theater in a possible crowd or see it at home, it was an easy choice to see it at home. But I don't know. Were you guys psyched about this? Like, how were you feeling coming into this movie? And I know we talked about it months ago, but I kind of feel like everything feels less eventful as it comes out nowadays. It's like it used to feel like a much bigger thing when a movie would hit, because you would go and have that crowd experience. And now it kind of feels like a much more like a compartmentalized experience that's less communal. So were you psyched?
Yeah, I was super psyched. Sometimes I think as mediums change, I'll give you an example. Like, I remember when CDs were out and people were like, it doesn't get any better than this. This physical thing doesn't get any better than this. Streaming came along and it was okay. But then high res came out and you're like, oh, what? I can hear everything. I can hear somebody walking around in the background. I can hear high res. It has changed things, right? And I think that sometimes because of the rate that we can get music, sometimes people treat it like music isn't an important thing, right? Like it's lost its potency, like it's lost some aspect of its value. And I think on some level, it could be viewed that way. Or it could be more accessible to people who may not feel as comfortable, going to a CD store and still want to purchase it and still want to give money, perpetually to somebody, paying for a service. So when this idea, I'm very pro digital media, but I don't ever want to get rid of the movie experience. But if I'm watching something at home and it's 4K, surround sound, your sound bar is pumping it out, your TV, some people's TVs, you don't even need the sound bar for certain TVs. It's like pumping out bass, like the fact that you can have that experience at home is really, really kind of amazing. People forget sometimes, because we have this sort of feeling about movies, that motherfuckers are like talking and texting and you see lights going off and, sometimes fights have broken out when we've gone to the movies. And I'm not saying that that's an excuse to never go to the movies. I'm just saying to not go as frequently doesn't feel like a loss to me the way that it because I remember feeling like I wanted to go over to somebody and twist their head physically off their body, because we would go to a screening and a person would talk through every plot point. Aaron almost watched me knock a man out because he was literally talking through the whole movie. Oh man, I can't believe he said that. He said that. Oh, that means that man's a drug dealer. Are you fucking kidding me, man? I'm sorry. So I just say that to say
that you were psyched. You were happy to sit down in your home theater and put this movie on.
So psyched. And when I turned it on, it delivered. That's all I'll say. I'll start with
that's all you'll say, and then you put down the mic and you actually
all right. All right. See you guys later.
Shit, Ronald.
All right, guys. I'll see you later.
Ronald, we have more time to kill.
No.
But it delivered. That's the one. Yeah, I would say so. As a fan of James Gunn, I think it delivered on the premise of him with a little bit more freedom to just James Gunn it up, and a little bit less like not being asked to be beholden to this master plan, this Marvel plan that, you know, he's worked about as well as anyone has within the restrictions of finding some life within this overly planned franchise. I think that, you know, I would say a lot of the Marvel movies have found that life, but he's maybe the best one at it in some ways. But this felt like just something he does. You know, if you've been following him, you felt a lot of that kind of trauma, those early days of how he got started, and like with a budget, you know. And so in that sense, like James Gunn, R-rated, gory, you know, slapsticky at times, but like character based, and with characters that that are really only intended to last long enough for a cool scene or a cool, you know, not to say too much, but yes, the theme, what was the tagline was "Don't get too attached."
Yeah,
I think that is a great way to approach this movie, because, you know, you have to come into it knowing that that's the fun James Gunn is having, is that DC basically said, we don't care which characters you play with, as long as you pull from like this pool of sort of like C-list characters.
Right.
We don't have plans for any of these people. And he was just able to, kind of surprise you with that. But, you know, it delivered on that premise. What do you think, Steve? I mean, your brief thoughts, just the basic idea of how you reacted to this movie.
I mean, I was very excited to see it, and I like the idea. Like when he announced that the ratio was 1:1, I think that's good for home viewing as well. Like, it's shot for IMAX entirely.
Yeah.
But, you know, most TVs are widescreen now and are laid out as such, so there's really not a need, in my opinion, if I'm watching it at home, like Ronald described. I don't need the bars, you know.
Don't need the bars.
Just show me as much as I can see on my TV. And I think some people don't like that ratio or the 1:8.5, but I think it plays well if you're watching it at home or you want to go see it on an IMAX screen.
Yeah.
So I was excited to hear that, because like you, Ron, have a decent TV, decent sound system. So when we watched it, I mean, it looked and sounded awesome. And, you know, the idea of, you know, being a fan of James Gunn's and excited to kind of see, you know, what he was going to do with these characters after not really enjoying David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie much at all. I just was, you know, everything lined up, and like John said, like I just feel like James Gunn is kind of one of those guys who from front to back kind of like has a vision, has a take, has a way to do it, and whether it's Marvel or DC, for the most part, they're just like, you know, do it that way and let's see how it goes. So I mean, I was excited to experience that. And to be honest, I was excited to see it in the DC world. I mean, like, you know, DC, for all of the criticisms that kind of get thrown at it for like the unevenness and the mishmash of what's going on with their DCEU, I think one of the more exciting things to come out of any of these announcements that they've made and what was coming down the pike was the fact that James Gunn, you know, when given an opportunity to do whatever he wanted in the DC EU, you know, he was offered a Superman movie. Like, you know, he chose to do another take on the Suicide Squad, and it seems like it was the right thing for him to do. And I think the movie kind of works because of that, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen people say, oh, they're trying to make it seem like the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I'm like, in a way, you could say that it's got similar beats, similar ways of characters relating, but there is a slightly different aesthetic to it, because you aren't setting up characters for the same kind of long haul that you are doing with that sort of thing. But also I don't know, there's just something about him playing in this zone of like the fun you can have when you're not having to do that, when there is no promise of future stuff. And I'm not saying Marvel can't do that within their, you know, they can find a place in a movie, a story in which they can have more sort of spontaneity like that, but you feel it. You feel the kind of freedom of it. And I think that kind of hat trick that he pulled off. How do you get fired by Disney and then get hired by Warner Brothers and then get rehired by Disney? And both sides, everybody's saying like, oh, we've got plans with James. Oh, yes, we're working with him on this and that. I mean, and he's already spun off John Cena's character from the Suicide Squad into it's a show. And I mean, if you've seen that movie, you might be asking like, are you interested in spending one more second with that douchebag character? I would say no, but I also think that with a person with James Gunn, like with his aesthetic, you know that he has to have an angle. And I think that John Cena, like, I don't want to see them put this character on a redemption path, but I do think they can deepen him a little bit and still keep the focus on just what a douchebag this guy is, because what he represents in the movie is kind of like American shitty foreign policy. You know, like his character basically stands in for that kind of brute force without caring about the people that you're even supposedly there to help. When he says, I'll kill as many people to liberate them as I have to, or whatever. So I think that John Cena's funny enough to, I mean, I still am not sold on him as a guy who can really carry something, but I think that there's something that he's game. And I think that goes a long way. And I don't think James Gunn would do this if he didn't have an idea. But that's another thing that happened because of COVID, is that James Gunn was sitting around and had time to write 8 episodes of a Peacemaker show for HBO Max. And now they're talking about more seasons of the thing. You know, they want to do more. So if it's a way for him to build out his kind of scuzzball corner of the DC extended universe and have it possibly cross over with some of these bigger properties. I mean, and then meanwhile, he's doing a Christmas special with the Guardians for Marvel, and he's doing Guardians 3, and they've said they want to do future stuff with, I mean, yeah, it's kind of just amazing the position the guy's in, and the fact that he seems to have done what he's done without generating much bad blood, except with the people who, you know, are still pissed off about the stupid tweets or whatever that he justifiably disgusting tweets, but he has apologized, and that's been 10 years. And anyway, I just think, yes, like anybody who was feeling sorry for James Gunn when Disney fired him is like, you can officially stop.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he did it right. I mean, if there were to be a proper way to apologize, lay low, and then get back on the train, he did it, man. So sometimes I feel like there's like this overbearing sort of narrative that like DC is so inferior that they can't make good films. So I mean, this is just a random thing I was looking at. There's an article that IGN did, kind of just putting together all the ratings that they have for all of their movies. And I trust IGN, honestly. I mean, I do. I've been reading it for years and years and years. I'm just gonna go by these movies. Man of Steel 9.0, Justice, Batman versus Superman 6.8, Suicide Squad 5.9, Wonder Woman 7.9, Justice League 7.0, Aquaman 7.5, Shazam 8.8, Joker 10, Birds of Prey 8, Wonder Woman 1984 8. I don't think it deserves that, but let's do Justice League at 8 and Suicide Squad at 9. So there's a population of people that don't necessarily hate these movies the way that the internet sort of feeling seems to be, because Marvel does have some continuity. I think this is sort of a space where DC is kind of saying, our things are a little more raunchy. Our things are a little more adult. You know, people, you're going to see some blood, maybe. You're going to see some, you know, I just like the idea that this is a cool alternative to these movies where you might not see somebody get shot. You know, it's like but these, I think it's cool because comic books are like that. And somehow there's something that got missing where like comic book representation on the screen isn't like it is in a comic book somehow. Like, but it tends to be, I'm not saying that all comic books are, you can see a hole going through a person, but people die and people bleed and people.
That has more to do with movie ratings, though. Like showing blood of a certain amount means you're getting an R. But if you're getting an R, then you're not getting like, you know, the same return on it. So I mean, I can see why they don't want to make every movie an R-rated movie, but I agree that seeing actual consequences and seeing like people get a bloody nose and seeing shit, like I do think it adds to the sort of weight of the thing. And if you're looking for a movie to have that, the Suicide Squad, pardon me, has got you covered. It's got like, it's gory, and I do think that's one of the reasons why I was mentioning the trauma kind of roots of James Gunn, is that it's got that sort of, like, it's a heightened B movie. I mean, it really is, and I think it wears it on its sleeve, and it knows it. And it, it's a $185 million movie that has the ethos of a not quite exploitation movie, but it's on that level of like just going for those visceral thrills and chills and surprising you and having those moments that James Gunn, I think, is pretty good at crafting. I mean, he's pretty good at having where you could argue that some of his stories have an odd shape to them for this reason, but he's not averse to having one of those kind of, it's just a surprising rhythm to a scene, or a surprising, like something's happened in the story that happened at a moment that feels like, okay, well, what now? Okay, well, what's going to happen now? And I think that you don't often get that, as you've said, Ronald, like the differences between these movies. You don't often get that in a Marvel movie. That sense of really feeling like I think that it's a little overstated, the idea that you don't know who's going to live and who's going to die in this thing. I think it's not long into this movie that you realize, okay, we are now watching a relatively conventional movie in terms of who's going to live and who's going to die. But it starts off with a bang in terms of showing you the idea. Like they do everything they can to sell the idea that anyone could die. But if you've seen a movie before, you can kind of spot the characters that are not cannon fodder in this movie. I would even say, look at the poster, but that maybe that's a spoiler. Right. But no, I think that it's a fun energy, and I think we're all saying it scratched that itch for a kind of James Gunn movie. Were there favorite moments or characters or beats that you want to kind of talk about before we move on to the performance of the movie and what it means?
I think that in general, most people really like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, and I think that this is definitely her best turn as Harley Quinn. And I think it's just like I was reading an interview and listening to a podcast interview with James Gunn, and him just talking about like how much he loves that character and like loves being able to write for that character. So I think it was really a standout to me to kind of like see her have a little more to do. I mean, like, for a movie that's an ensemble, there was some really good Harley moments in this movie that I felt like were kind of standouts among any of the times that we've seen her thus far in the DC movies. So I feel like, and I love Margot Robbie in general, but I think she is like, we talk about these performances, of people that like are that characters, like perfect casting, whatever you want to say about David Ayer's movie, like he cast Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, and that was perfect casting. And like, she's got this whole career now as this character. So it's like, that is what it is. But I mean, I just think that there's a lot of moments in this movie that I think is some of the best stuff she's done as that character.
Absolutely.
Peacemaker I thought was fun. I think I actually am curious to see what the show is. I do kind of want to see more. I think there's enough there that I kind of want to, I agree. I don't want to see him kind of have a redemption type thing, or like, kind of be made out any different way than we kind of left with him in this movie. But I do think I like John Cena in this role, and I did like that character. If I had to pick one that stands out, I mean, like, I think the scene when him and Idris, which by the way, Idris finally, I think somebody used Idris right.
Oh my God. I was going to say, he finally got like a role that's worthy of like his whole toolbox. He really got to be funny and like a little world weary and cool and all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a part of so many franchises, and he gets done dirty in so many of them.
So many.
But he is great in this, and
he's absolutely great.
But
his little thumbs up moment is one of my favorite moments in the
scene with him and Peacemaker going through that village to rescue Rick Flag. That whole sequence, I think, is just fucking great. It literally feels like a side scroll video game sequence, and I think they even like shot it that way.
Nobody likes a show off, unless what they're showing off is fucking dope. And he's like, he's right.
It's a good point. And I'm like, damn, like that sequence is just like it's everything John said. It's like very gross and brutal, and
And has a
disgusting in
great
some
payoff too.
ways.
Like the actual payoff
Yes,
after the scene is
yes,
fantastic. I think
yes.
one of the best
But that
comedy
that
moments.
that them two together, I think that scene really kind of sets the tone for a lot of the banter for the rest of the movie. But I don't know. What about you guys? Anything stand out? Like, what's the scene that stands
I
out
just
to you
want to
guys?
I want to piggyback onto what you just said though, and mention something you said, Ronald. I kind of agree because I have what you said earlier about the theatrical experience. You can possibly kind of overrate it in your head because I did have that when I went to see Old. That there were some people that were talking right up until the moment that the action in the movie started. Like they talked through the credits, and the opening stuff, but the second it was like acting on screen, they stopped. So I was like, okay. Phew. But I did have that moment of like I'm getting agitated because I've gotten used to not having that experience.
Yeah.
So I kind of am with you about thinking that you can kind of romanticize the theatrical experience. However, the moment we just talked about, or that we alluded to, that was a scene when I was watching that at home, like the whole aftermath to that scene we just described. I actually felt what the audience, like what it would have been like to be in a crowded theater and had that moment play out. Like the sort of release, the laugh, the whatever, and I think that like James Gunn, I think that's what I meant about it being a little sad, is that like the moments like that really can deliver, and he can deliver those big moments. I mean, he can deliver like those big funny moments. And so I do think it's a shame for that reason. But no, I think that I was going to say Idris Elba. And there's one character in the movie that if I'd known they were going to live, I would have relaxed the whole time.
Yeah.
And and I didn't know they were going to live, and so I couldn't relax. But the second time watching the movie, I very much relaxed about I'm not going to say which creature it was, but there was a friendly creature in the movie that I was glad it wasn't like a setup for one of these brutal James Gunn gags where, because any character you start to like in this movie, that it's like, okay, he could be getting ready to shiv me. And you talk about Harley Quinn being really iconic in this, Steve, and her and Margot Robbie being really good. That whole Milton thing cracked me up so much.
Yeah.
Like, anyway,
so good. What about you, Ronald?
Stand-up moments, characters, creatures.
Ratcatcher 2 and her companion, like just seeing the rat like put his hand up to slap. Was it
Sebastian? What's the
Sebastian?
I think it was Sebastian. Yeah. When the rat put his hand up to slap Idris's hand, and it's just like he just looks at his hand.
Did he just put his hand up to give me, what does he say? Did he just put his hand in the air?
He looks at his hand like, why would somebody refuse this hand?
Well, then later, the woman leader of the resistance asks Colonel Flagg. She says, "Is that rat waving at me?" And he looks over there and he says, "Yes, I believe he is." And she's like, "Why is he doing that?"
God, that was so good, man.
Yes,
it was really, really well put together. So we have a resident statistician on our staff. Steve, tell us the math of Suicide Squad.
How did this movie do?
How
should we judge this movie, Steve? Should we be judging it pre-pandemic standards? Are we in a new world where we don't know what the numbers mean anymore? There's no way that a movie that cost as much as this one did, there's no way they can be happy with the $26 million return at the box office this last weekend. But putting it out now and making it available on HBO Max, they had to have projected that we're in a different world now. So Steve, based on modern expectations, what does it mean to even perform well in this atmosphere? And did this movie do it?
I got 4 words for you.
Yeah.
Who the fuck knows?
Oh no.
Because nobody
frame
does.
To be continued.
I think the reality is that like the whole weekend we were going back and forth on our message board, like, or our message thread, about like just bad feelings about this movie and like a lack of want to see it. And of those wanting to see it that we knew, or I was saying, I think we all kind of agree, was like mostly everybody was talking about watching it at home. And and I think a lot of things contribute to that, but I think also like the idea that the country is it seems like we're kind of ebbing back down into a bad place, especially in certain parts of the country, that may be kind of scaring people away from going back to the movies. Because it's kind of crazy that of the Warner titles that kind of did this day and date, that like this film would underperformed compared to like Mortal Kombat and Godzilla versus Kong, or Kong versus Godzilla. I forget which one it's called.
Right.
But like, you know, those kind of movies overperformed in some ways, and I guess in perspective of what the box office and what theaters looked like then.
Yeah.
And now that there's so many screens open and so many restrictions lifted, but there's still a general lack of want to go back to the movies. It seems like there's a ceiling that we were talking about, of like something around that $30 million mark, where like these movies that are coming out, you know, the big titles every week, if it crosses certain demographics, like they're popping out around that frame, like 26 to 34, you know, a little more, a little less.
26 to 34. No.
There it is.
There you go. Sorry.
And, you know, I think this movie limits it a little more because of the rating. Yeah. Because of, like Rana was saying, there's maybe a feeling of like the DCU maybe being a little all over the place. And there's a lot of, I don't know, publicity. Any is good, I guess they say, but like, you know, bad around DC and like what they're doing. And even the Warner day and date decision, you know, there's been a lot of talk around that. But the reality is that this is where we're at. We spent the whole last podcast talking about where movies were and where theaters were and what we were talking, you know, in terms of what our preferences were. But yeah, you talk about a $185 million budgeted film before you even talk about P&A. Like, it's just a movie that internationally has to date made like 70 to 80 million. Yeah. I just don't know how you quantify the value of what HBO Max is doing outside of getting subscribers that stick around beyond the 30-day window that's the Suicide Squad is on HBO Max, you know, when it comes out in the theater. I think we're in like this gray area that there's got to be an after point, and the after point, whether it's good or bad, will feel more good or bad. Like it will be more black and white, I feel like. And that's because, you know, a lot of the studios are committing to smaller theatrical windows, but are getting away from the day and date stuff. Like Warner Brothers has recently announced that, you know, I think yesterday, we're recording this on Wednesday, Tuesday, they announced that, you know, they're committing to a 45-day window with AMC, which is the nation's largest theatrical chain, for all 2022 releases. So they're getting back to that. And it's going to be interesting to see who sticks around. Like if Disney is going to continue doing the premiere access that they did with Black Widow and Jungle Cruise, and we're kind of curious what they're going to do with Shang-Chi or not. But it's just this weird in between where nothing means anything anymore because there's no real measure of it. So I feel like you could read 20 things breaking down these numbers. And I think all that matters to them is that a lot of people watched it on HBO Max and they hope they can make their money back. I don't know if they will or they won't. But it is sad because I do think they made a great movie. I do think they had a great title. I don't know that the want was there to watch this movie maybe as much as they thought there was, especially coming off of, even though Suicide Squad made a lot of money, that movie, I don't know many people that really enjoyed that movie. And, you know, it was critically panned and all that good stuff. So I don't know. And even if you look at Birds of Prey, the standalone Harley Quinn movie that they couldn't even name, you know, just for her, that movie was kind of a underperforming as well, you know? So it's like, are these characters the ones that people really want to see movies for? I don't know, but it just seems like a lot of stuff is stacked against this movie's release, and it's unfortunate because it does seem like it's maybe now the poster child for this era of underperforming on this day and date circumstance that we're in. It's weird, man. It's so weird, and you can spin it. They can spin it any way they want, you know, because they're trying to say, oh, it was the second most viewed movie. And you know what was the most one? Mortal Kombat. Like this was not watched more than Mortal Kombat on HBO Max.
Right.
You know, so it's like even that spin, you still lose the perspective of, well, Mortal Kombat kind of overperformed at the box office a little based on where the world was at the time that it came out. We weren't at this point right now. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just the comps are not there, and you just it's hard to say what this means. And I don't think it means anything except to say we had a movie, we're trying to put it out. This is what we have to do, and you know we'll see what happens.
Yeah, like DC, their universe should be a bigger draw than Mortal Kombat. You know what I mean? Like
right, exactly.
It should be a bigger story than Mortal Kombat. And like it
Right.
makes me think about when they're trying to go from I mean, did it hurt this movie that the name is The Suicide Squad, and the movie that came out a few years back was called Suicide Squad? And even if you kind of half remembered that movie, I heard people saying like, do I have to see the other one to see this? Like,
Right.
I feel like there was some
Right.
confusion about what was going on with it. That, I mean, I don't know how much that actually kept people away from watching it, but I don't know. I'm curious about what were those misses. The other thing we referred to was the marketing leaned really heavily on From the Twisted Mind of James Gunn. And I think that like, I don't even think that I thought that seemed like a good strategy, but I happen to be in a bubble where people seem to know who James Gunn is. But I would even say that within my bubble, which is not that, doesn't skew that hard nerdy. I mean, you know, like I look at the people I'm connected to on social media, it's definitely not like all like, I don't know, movie nerd Twitter stuff, you know, like it's a wide cross section, but I can kind of tell when people are excited about something new, and when there's some new Marvel thing or some new show or whatever people are talking about, I see all those people being like, so should I check this thing out? And I was just not seeing the level of interest about this movie that I see about a lot of other things, you know, a lot of other things that become part of the zeitgeist. Even King Kong versus Godzilla, it felt like it had a kind of a period where everybody was sort of talking about it. And this movie, outside of a few people like day of, maybe next day, that I saw, you know, talking about it in a very favorable way, but it wasn't even like, so even within that bubble, I guess what I'm saying is it wasn't getting the traction that something like Loki did, or something like WandaVision did, you know, which is, it should not be the case.
I think one of the cool parts about things now is that they'll have a second life in PVOD. I watch the charts pretty frequently, and so this movie is going to only be on HBO Max for 31 days, right? So it leaves HBO Max and then goes to PVOD, where the price can be kind of shifted. You know, it starts at 30, you know, they'll have a sale where it goes down to 20. And if you watch what happened with Universal, the model worked for them. Like, and put it in the theater, to put in PVOD. That's,
you're right.
Trolls World Tour stayed on the charts for damn near 5 months, like pretty consistently in the top 5. So I think this movie is going to have a second life in PVOD, because there's a couple of things, a couple of advantages that you get in this whole experience. You get for PVOD, people who do not have HBO Max will be able to see this movie, right? Then when you can buy it, you can watch it in a higher quality 4K. They won't tell you this, but if you get it on PVOD, it'll be in a higher quality than HBO Max. HBO Max is great for what it is, but you're getting a different experience. You'll get you'll get bonus features, you'll get extra scenes, you get things that you will not get by watching it in HBO Max. And I guarantee this will be on the charts after this 31 days. It always happens. Mortal Kombat was the same way. Like, even though Mortal Kombat did better than Suicide Squad, it did still remain on a PVOD list for quite some time. So I think there's a second life. And I think that it does hurt them. Obviously, this thing being a flop, but I think what'll happen is,
I don't know if it's a flop. It's just weirdly missed, you know, like
it's just weird that's the way people are wording it. I think that's what I mean. Like, we know it's not a flop, because, you know, this thing is, I think the momentum of this hasn't stopped. It feels like it's going to have a second life in this second arena of PVOD, but it hurts, man. It does hurt, but because James Gunn worked hard to do, you can feel the love on the screen. You know, it's a weird movie.
Yeah,
it's fucking good. It's gonna weird you out. It's gonna fuck you up. It's gonna make you feel a little emotional, and you can feel that. We do watch a lot of mediocre. Yeah, we watch a lot of mediocre stuff, and the things that rise to the top deserve attention, deserve the money, and there's some things that do not deserve the
Ronald,
attention.
You know what James Gunn has that a lot of other directors who make this kind of movie don't have? A point of view.
Ooh.
He has a point of view. It may not be something to say, but he has like a philosophy, a point of view. There's something he's like, and I think actually there's a lot going on in Suicide Squad that like bucks the little trends of the genre and what you might expect. And I do think he's someone who he could be that person to push it forward with stories that are actually interesting and exist on their own legs and not having to be part of this overall tapestry. But I also think that he has kind of a style that he works in. And so seeing this movie and, oh gosh, the criticism that it reminded people too much of Guardians of the Galaxy was like, okay, whatever. I mean, I can see that there are certain character moments that might remind you of that, but it's handled in such a different way. And I think he loves actors. That's the other thing. I think James Gunn really enjoys the people that he gets to work with. And I think you can feel that too. So, no, I agree. Here's the other question I wanted to ask you guys, because this is the thing that I'm really wondering. I don't know. Like, I'm not so much saying, are they going to start yanking movies off the schedule for the next few months? But if movies like this, like, what is the proper, like, if you're Disney and you've got Shang-Chi coming out in a month, right? And here's a movie that, if we're talking about traction with people, we just saw Black Widow have this moment where it seemed to kind of not really underperform, but kind of underperform. And now we're seeing Suicide Squad kind of, not really underperform, but kind of underperform. What hope does a movie that's all new characters, largely unknown, leading cast compared to some of these other films? Like, I'm looking forward to it. I think it looks really cool, but the performance of these movies does sort of affect the plans behind them, and it affects how the budgets are managed for the future installments. So these movies, I mean, it is relevant in some ways to talk about the box office of these movies. I don't know. What are you two feeling for specifically for Shang-Chi, but also just that idea of movies that are on the schedule? Is Marvel, are they just going to say, well, we've got so many movies backed up, we're going to put these out regardless of how they're going to do? Or are they going to need to figure out some way to get back to even a larger fraction of what they used to pull in?
I have this sense of dread, honestly. Like I could tell, I mean, you guys can feel it, that the Shang-Chi momentum is being slowed. I mean, like, I saw a ton of commercials a couple weeks ago. I'm not seeing as many commercials. I'm not seeing as much push. So I can tell that the movie that we want to look forward to in a couple weeks is probably not going to come out. I think they're going to do what they did with Black Widow, where they like push it, let's push it a month, and then that month is going to become March 2022.
What does that mean for the Eternals and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange or any of that stuff?
I don't think any of that stuff is coming out this year. I think that they've learned their lesson. And here's another interesting thing. Depending on if they ride this out and release it, this could affect the Black Widow case. It depends on how, if Eternals comes out and does awful, then my movie was affected by COVID. COVID shit on this movie the way that it shit on Eternals that just came out a couple weeks ago. I need this $20 million that I'm owed, or 30 or whatever, or how much? It's $5 million?
50.
It's 50. Steve, stop playing with me.
Talking about Scarlet, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. So so she can build a case. So I think that Disney is going to not. So I think they're going to throw us a bone and put something out. I don't know if it's going to be Shang-Chi. I think that'll be the movie that they put out. That'll be the bait. They're not going to put the Eternals out because Eternals is a huge. I mean, Angelina Jolie will go up to Bob Iger and stab him, and then stab the new guy.
Isn't the problem not that they put these movies out during this climate?
She'll stab Bob Iger and Bob Jake.
But the problem is not that these movies are coming out. But the reason why just Scarlett Johansson is suing is because they put it out at home. Like if they don't put it out at home, then they don't really have a legal. There's not going to be lawsuits, I don't think, if they put it out in the theater and just no one's going to the theater.
No. The case would be, I kind of agree with what Ronald. My take is that I think they will put Shang-Chi out on whatever September 3rd or whatever it's supposed to be. They're not going to do the premiere access.
Ooh.
I think it's going to be a test to see how it does in a theatrical only window. Yeah. And if it does not perform, that helps Disney's case. and hurts hers,
Just
and it gives them a reason
they're sacrificing this movie. Steve,
I don't know.
That's cruel, man.
I think they're too close. Like they're 3 weeks out from this movie coming out, and they're still releasing posters and trailers and shit. Like as of a couple of days ago, new posters. I think that they like the machine is run. Unless something like horrible happens and like the numbers get like even way worse. I don't think they pull Shang-Chi. I think they leave it out, and I don't know that they see it as a sacrifice, but I think they see it as a real test of whether people will go to the movies if it's the only way to see this movie that they really want to see. Or are they going to stay home and wait 30, 45, 90, whatever the days are, until it gets onto some other sort of platform, and then that will probably dictate, because the next one is in November, right? So I mean that gives them time to pull it, because you've noticed that we haven't seen anything else for Eternals. You know what I mean? Like nothing beyond that trailer, and like no publicity for it, no additional. Maybe a couple posters have come out, but I mean that's been like a month plus, 2 months ago, and I think that they're trying to see if Shang-Chi can perform any better as a theatrical only, because as of the time that we're recording this, I think there's multiple statements that at this time there's no plans to release it on Premier Access. It's a theatrical release.
This is a pawn sacrifice, man. This is fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it.
I don't know.
Sounds like it.
I don't know.
This is first movie with like Asian representation.
That's the horrible part.
Yeah,
that's a bad look.
That is not good.
It feels like it, man. It feels like a pawn sacrifice. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
But if it performs like they want it to, but I mean, it's kind of like you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot, because I think that really does, solidifies Scarlett's case. And I mean, I don't think that that's gonna go far. They're gonna settle this, I think. But I just think it's weird right now, man. And like there's nothing's really performing. There's like this ceiling like that we talked about. And if Shang-Chi comes out and is only in theaters and only makes $30 million or whatever, 40 million, if it somehow gets to that, that's still not a win. Like that's not a win at all.
So I have a theory, and tell me how you guys feel about this. No standalone Marvel movie will do well during a pandemic. I think it has to be connected to a story we know already. Like, I think the only one that'll do well if it comes out this year is Spider-Man.
Yep.
That's the only way, because it's connected to a bigger story. We know Spider-Man. People love Spider-Man, like incessantly. Like, we'll do anything to see him. I don't know if this will be this Eternals and Shang-Chi won't be it. And it's by no means a disrespect to the story or how good it'll be.
No, not at all.
It has to do with what people are willing to risk during the COVID right now.
And what you're getting at too is like the effort it takes to get something new into people's consciousness. Like a new idea, new characters. Like my wife, who has enjoyed all the Marvel stuff with me, we watched the Shang-Chi trailer, and my son and I were kind of buzzing about, oh, this looks cool and this looks cool. And she was like, not in a negative way, but she just said, am I supposed to know who that is? Like, as though she was saying, like, I don't know if I know how that connects to anything, And so in a way that is the problem, is that you just can't feel this, like, for whatever reason. And I don't know if it has to do with COVID or if it's just that certain movies come at a time where it's hard to get people focused on it. But I just wonder if this has kind of broken the bubble of, at least for the time being, of these kind of blockbuster movies. Like they got so ready for this world where, like, you put out one of these movies that you spend, like you said, Steve, $200 million on the budget, and then spend that again on the marketing. And they got so used to making 3 or 4 times that, or 2 or 3 times that with the worldwide box office. And it was this worthwhile thing. And I just don't know that they know how. Like, I think that people were excited to go to the theater and crowds were doing that. And now I don't think Disney has a plan. As smart as they've been, the MCU, none of the people over there have a plan. The people at DC, they don't have a plan for, like, how do you get people that excited about stuff now? You know, especially as you said, something brand new, a character that, as cool as it may look and as interesting as the cast may appear, and especially if you're upbeat and positive about the representation part of it, you know, that's another reason to be excited about that movie. But none of that means anything in a world where they don't really know how to get people excited about movies again, like how to prioritize movies in our lives again, you know.
That's the problem, is that I think that the pecking order has been rearranged. You know, I just think that the idea of priorities, I just don't know that movie going and the frequency at which you do that is a priority to a lot of people anymore, especially when you can sort that into the convenience of watching something from home in something that you're already paying for.
Yes.
So I do think you're right in that. I think it really kind of has shaken it up. I think it's kind of really reconfigured the whole idea of blockbuster movies, quote unquote, on both sides of the equation. A blockbuster in terms of scope and budget, and a blockbuster in terms of performance. I think it's tilted right now. Like it's one side is up, and they can't get that balance. And that's what I was trying to get at earlier. I don't know a movie that is going to really be able to deliver that balance anytime soon. Maybe a Spider-Man. I think that's probably the best bet between this. Yeah, James Bond, maybe between this and the end of the year. Then again, though, you know, you look at a Fast 9, that's also a movie that should have done that. And I mean, it's still doing better than most movies that have come out now, but or Black Widow even. Like they both are nowhere near the heights that they were expected to be. And even a Spider-Man may suffer from that.
Yeah.
Black Widow's now on PVOD, just to randomly point that out.
And I think, like, you know, the fact that we haven't even seen stuff for Spider-Man, you know, is a little questionable.
Could be telling.
But I don't know. I mean, I just think we're in a weird gray area, and I think there's you know, up is down, black is white, and there's no real logic to it. It's like let's see what we can do. Let's see if it sticks. Let's see if people find this movie, or come to support this movie. And you know, I too would hate to see a movie like Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings be sacrificed. But I you know, I don't know that it's kind of. It would definitely not be positioned as that. It'd be more of like, you know, we need to test, you know, this criticism that is being levied upon us by our talent, by a lot of people like in the industry, and say, like, can it perform like some of these other ones have? Like the Fast and Furious example is one that was not available day and date, you know, and that did pretty good. Man, it's just weird, and it's not helping anything that the country is basically going backwards.
Yes.
Right.
You know, with the COVID of it all, you know, it's not helping any effort of any of these studios or talent filmmakers. And I don't know, like, one last thing I want to mention, we talk about like what's coming for the rest of the year and the ones that might save it, quote unquote, or actually outperform or overperform. I sent the message to you guys. I was like, the real question that I have for you guys for today's podcast, and I want you to tell me what you think about this. The guy that this podcast loves, a man that we all are huge fans of, and I'm very excited for the next movie he has coming out. But the reality is setting in that Dune could possibly be the biggest flop of a long time.
Yes.
Really concerning me, and I don't know what they're going to do in terms of, I mean, they're still ramping it up, so I'm assuming they're going for it. It's less than 2 months out, but this movie is a monster budget. We're talking over $200 million, and I cannot look at this title and in the trailers, and while I have found them to be great, how the fuck is this movie going to make any money when it's coming out day and date, let alone even if it was just theatrical only? Where is an audience?
There isn't.
For this movie right now.
There isn't, man. The thing is, the magic, oh God, I can't believe I'm saying this. The magic of Netflix is that it can invite you into a world that you aren't necessarily familiar with without sacrificing your time going someplace.
You're so right. You're so
And
right.
this sci-fi, this type of sci-fi is like high art. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
There's a difference between Star Wars, and there's no offense to Star Wars, and what Dune and Blade Runner were doing. This is like high art, man. And I think that sometimes this is a hard sell. I haven't, and to be completely honest with you, I've never been able to watch the new Blade Runner. I have not finished it, and it has to do with like what it is, the scale of it. I'm a little intimidated, if I can be completely honest with you. And Dune looks twice as intimidating, and I'm in for it. I'm in for it. I'm gonna see it. Is it gonna be simultaneous HBO Max?
Yeah,
or they haven't?
I mean, that was the original announcement. Who knows what they'll do now?
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Although apparently they haven't like finished that deal with Legendary to pay them out for that release. So I mean, that's why it's a little bit of a question mark.
Yeah.
But it also worries me because I don't know. I've not read the book. I'm not super familiar with the property, but you can tell from the trailer that this is obviously intentioned to be a 2-part movie. And it seems like it maybe is going to suffer from the criticism that Mortal Kombat got, where like movie about a tournament that never gets to a tournament. A movie about this massive epic battle that may not get to that battle in this movie. It seems like it's intended to be a second movie, and it's like there's a genuine worry that like they may not make a second movie.
But I mean, this project was created expecting to come out in the atmosphere of, look at all these movies that are making so many hundreds of millions, and this is a property that's got a real mythology behind it, and whether people know it or not, there's like a deep well of story. I don't know. There was a different plan. They hatched this movie in a different world. And yes, now you're right. This movie's like, I think what we're kind of avoiding saying, but it's kind of what you've said, Steve, is that like, okay, Suicide Squad did what it did, and it had whatever recognition based on the DC stuff and the connection to things like for audience engagement. Now, Dune may have fans of the sci-fi. I mean, there's, so it's a book that's been read by millions. So there may be enough fans of that book that the idea of a faithful adaptation is going to be exciting to them. But like Suicide Squad did what it did, and Dune doesn't even look fun. I mean, as good as it looks, it doesn't look fun. It doesn't look like a good time. So if you are the casual like person, unless you're the person who's like, oh my gosh, look at that imagery, look at the scope, look at the scale of this thing, it doesn't look like a blast. It kind of looks intimidating and serious, and so I don't know. To me, I hate to say, I just don't see how they could do it. I mean, unless the climate of who's going to the theater and how they're doing it is dramatically different in November or whenever it's supposed to come out. Like, I just don't see how they can create the sort of sense of an event that this movie was intended to be, that it was, built to be this huge theatrical event. And yes, you're right. I had not thought about the ramifications of that for our boy Denny, but
that'd be 2 burns on Denny.
And the problem is, this is going to happen, man. Like, there's going to be some think piece that comes out in 5 years, and it's like, we need to reassess Denis's work, and it'll list all these classic movies that he's done, Ex Machina, Blade Runner, this, all the films.
Well, he didn't do Ex Machina.
He didn't do Machina.
He didn't.
Alex Garland did.
Oh, for some reason I thought he did that. You attach yourself to these ideas, and it'll take something like that for somebody to write this article down the line about this, how great of a filmmaker this guy is. And I hate that it's happening on his watch the way that it is, and a lot of people that wanted to, even for as much as he bitched about it, Christopher Nolan, like the fact that Christopher Nolan couldn't put out a Christopher Nolan film on his terms. He comes out with a movie every couple years. It's not like he's like pumping them out every year. The fact that he couldn't get a proper release and couldn't put out the vision the way that he wanted, you could feel it. You could feel the he probably would have did a press run. He probably would have done.
But Tenet performed pretty well compared to the prospects a lot of these movies that we're talking about. Like at least Tenet came out, and same with Trolls World Tour. Those movies had the legs they did partially because of when they came out. There wasn't a lot going on, but Christopher Nolan actually getting in early was smarter in terms of that, I think, because people were sort of like there was some excitement for that movie, but I know what you're saying. It's like, I don't know. None of this stuff is the same. I mean, we just keep saying it, but it's like none of this is the same landscape that it was before. So it's almost hard to even talk about what the expectations should be. But definitely they would not have planned to spend what they've spent on some of these movies. And I wonder if we're going to see a return of, that kind of mid-budget movie that people have said is dying out. Maybe there's less risk if you spend 20 million on a movie that might make 50 or 60 than spending 200 million, honestly, on a movie that's supposed to make $1 billion and now might make, half of what you spent on it. I don't know. It's crazy.
I mean, it's weird, man. Like I haven't heard about any of the like $80 million movies, but you know what keeps popping up? Till Death with Megan Fox. It's just like, I think that this is, like you're saying, this perfect time for these like lower budget, mid-level films to shine that don't cost a ton of money, that people don't mind it going to PVO, straight to PVOD. They don't mind it showing up on like, being acquired by like a Netflix or Hulu. There's a sweet spot for that right now. And it feels like, as much as I hate it, this is a cool ass time for like this the Duplass brothers have that COVID movie that's coming out, the language lessons with Natalie, geez, I forget her name. Natalie Morales. Yeah. Which I think under normal circumstances wouldn't be a winner. I feel like if this gets in front of the right couple people, this movie could like skyrocket because it's different. It's not big budget. It feels a little closer to home. Like these films feel like they can win in a place where, like, I like to douse the podcast with something random and indie. These are going to be the ones that kind of rise to the top during this time. So we'll see what happens, man. It's sad though. We all feel this like
all the circle back though. Watch the Suicide Squad. Please. It's a lot of fun. The podcast, we've all given it a very positive review. It's worth checking out, whether you're safe enough or feel comfortable enough going to a theater. I am jealous. I would love to go see it in the Dolby screen and just kind of experience it there before it moves off of that. But I won't be doing that, unfortunately, because again, America. But I just think that, if you have a safe space to watch this movie at your home and you have an HBO Max subscription, it's definitely worth checking out. It's a blast. It's a lot of fun. And there's a lot to take away from it that is like makes it an enjoyable watch, especially, considering we haven't really had a ton of great stuff in a little while. So, I mean, I think this stands out a little bit to me personally.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's it.
That's it, man. That's it. Again, Nine Perfect Strangers debuts next Wednesday, I think, on Hulu.
Yeah, the first three
episodes will be out. And then I think they're going to do like a weekly type of rollout, which they do quite often. And then again, The Suicide Squad is on HBO Max now. And like Ronald said, it's only going to be there for like 31 days. So you've got like 3 weeks left to check it out.
Yeah.
If you want to watch it on that platform or go to a theater if you're comfortable doing that. And What If? Mention that real quick. What If on Disney Plus. The first episode's out, coming out on Wednesdays, as all the Disney series that Marvel's doing are planning to do. So moviesmovie.com is the website. Hit it up. You can listen to back episodes right on that site or jump into whatever podcast app platform you listen to podcasts on. It should be everywhere. I think this week a new feature is rolling out on Facebook where you should be able to listen to our podcast feed on our Facebook page. We're working on trying to get that enabled this week, hopefully. So that'll, if you are a Facebook person who is on there all day, couldn't be easier for you to listen to this podcast. And it's great on there because you can share it so easily. So, that's no excuse if that's the case.
Yeah.
but hopefully we get that running by the time this episode comes out. Next week we'll be back. Hopefully we'll catch up on a little more what if. Maybe talk about another episode of Nine Perfect Strangers. Talk about the White Lotus. That season finale will be up, and I don't know, whatever comes to mind between now and then. That's just how open we are and flexible we are, and we'll see what rolls up. We'll probably be talking about how Free Guy underperformed at the box office, or maybe overperformed.
Yeah.
Maybe the Ryan Reynolds of it all. Maybe he's the wild card. I don't know.
Maybe.
Not so much in the Hitman's Bodyguard's Wife's movie, whatever that was called. That didn't do so hot. But anyway, yeah, that'll be next week. Thank you for listening. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.